Good day everyone. So today in this video I'm going to talk about the exercise I did where I turned the Asaro head into a realistic portrait using color and shading, and I'm going to explain how I did this exercise. This is a popular exercise that people usually do because it's a great way to practice form, lighting and realism with skin. And with this Asaro head you can use it to understand the values that are usually present in a person's face, and from there push on to realism. And usually I've harped about this a lot, where I talk about that if you're starting, I didn't do this, I eventually learned about this as I went on, but if you're starting out and you want to actually make your work look really good and have really good form and look quite solid, it is usually good to start with understanding values before you then move to colors, because understanding values is what is going to give the drawings that you do proper form. And when I talk about form, I'm talking about length, width, height and depth. Understanding how values work is very important, because once you've done that you can easily transition into color, and color is another baggage on its own. And to be honest, I have a lot to learn in that aspect, but learning values is going to, if you're someone that hasn't taken time out to understand like values or paint with values first, once you've done this, once you take out time to actually do this exercise, you're going to see how much better your art is going to look. Like applying colors is just going to it's just going to be like an extra to your work, but values are especially very important, whether you're painting landscape, whether you're painting portraits or whatever it is you're working on. Understanding values is very essential because it's going to give your work depth, it's going to give your portrait depth, and that's what I'm doing here. This Asaro head is a very useful tool, and it's going to help with lighting. The process of painting the planes, right? First of all, we're going to have to draw the head, and if you're a beginner, I would suggest like looking at the Andrew Loomis planes of the head, the circle, and having your center line, and we're going to have 3 sections of the face. This area over here is going to be our hairline, this area over here is going to be our eye line, it's going to be the base of our nose, and then we're going to create an extra layer over here, which is going to be where our jaw will be. So that's the Andrew Loomis planes of the head in just a few quick seconds. And with that, we're going to use that to break down the front view over here. I'm going to use that to break down this front view. I'm not going to spend my time detailing this because I've already done the exercise before. I'm just going to explain how. And when you're doing this exercise, one thing I want you to notice is the shapes, right? Shapes are very important. Understanding simple shapes is what's going to help your art improve and your understanding of values, because when you then come to complex paintings like this lady for instance, you're going to see things like the shape of the shadow. If we are looking at her nose now, we're going to see things like, because we've like put in that principle or that way of looking at portraits whereby we're breaking things down into simple shapes, like that her nose is going to become much more easier, because we're going to see like the planes of her nose. We're going to see these lights down here, this light over in this area. Now that light is it's like an interpretation of the plane of the nose. So yeah, despite the fact that the light direction is coming from her left, you're going to see that this by understanding the planes of the face, and understanding it as simple shapes, like it's easy to understand why light is hitting this part of her nose, and understand like this, like the simple shape of the shadow. Like the shadow, we are going to just look at it as a simple shape rather than looking at it as this complex thing. With the Andrew Loomis method or technique of drawing the face, there are sections. So there's the hairline, to the brow line, the brow line to the bottom of the nose, from the bottom of the nose to the jaw. And like the ear is usually, like if we're looking at a basic front view, the ear is usually measures from the brow line to the nose, like to the bottom of the nose, and then we'll have our ears. Why I suggest you have to at least know the basics of drawing the human head before you do this is because you are going to have to draw this head in different angles, and in as much as to be honest, for me this was a little bit of I won't say stressful, but it was a little bit tough. I discovered that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So but if you at least have a basic understanding of the Andrew Loomis planes of the face, or the Andrew Loomis, like his method on how to draw the head, is going to be a little bit much more easier for you. Yeah, so once you've done this, the next thing you do is to just pick your color, your base color, and we're dealing in black and white. We're trying to understand the values of the face. That is one of the main reasons of this exercise. We're trying to understand the values of the face, like all these planes over here when we're having basic lighting, because once we've understood this with like basic simple lighting like this, when we start getting different lighting, like either different lighting directions, either from the side or from the bottom view or from the top, or whatever, will get a different or strange lighting, it's going to be easy, because that fundamental of how the planes of the face looks, it's easy for us to understand. And one more thing I want to talk about these planes is that these planes, the way the structure of the face, like these planes, they come about due to how our skeleton. If you've done like a study of the skull, you're going to see that the face is a solid reflection of what the skull is like. And because if you take a clay, chop a part of that clay, you chop a part of that clay like this, and then you chop a part of that clay like this, you're going to see, based on the lighting, let's say the lighting is coming from here. Let's use our reference. Let's say the lighting is coming from here to this side. You're going to see that once you've chopped this part of the clay, this side are going to become darker, this side are going to become darker. And that is kind of what we're seeing here with this Asaro head. And then once you take another piece of clay and then you shape that piece of clay like this, and you put it on this part, you're going to see that that piece of clay, that part is going to receive more light, because if we're looking at it, the clay from the side view, we're going to see this hole that we've put over here, and then we're going to see this shape over here like this. And because this is protruding outwards, it's going to get more light. And that is the same thing we're seeing here with the nose, with this bridge of the nose, where it's receiving much more light. And like with this area over here, this area is usually called the glabella or the keystone area. That area is, you can see it's a bit more darker, because it's a bit more darker because it is curved, right? It is curved like this. It is curved. This area has been pushed inwards. So when we are looking at the face like this, it's a rough side view of the human face. Looking at the face like this, and then light is shining on this side. You're going to see this side is going to be bright, but this side, because it's facing away from light, is going to be in shadow. And the reason why we're seeing this part be bright is because there's a part that is protruding within this there's a part that is protruding within this that is exposing itself to light, that is popping out from there, exposing itself to light. This side, this bridge of the nose, is going to receive light, while this underside of the nose is going to be away from light. So light, bright, light. So light, dark, you know, based on this, it's not going to receive a lot of light. But when you look at the lip of a person, when you're looking at the lip of a person, you usually see that if you're looking at, like, you know, basic good lighting, you usually see that this crossbow area, this vermilion border area, it usually gets a lot of highlights. And the upper lip is usually darker, and that is because it is curved this way, and then the lower lip is up like this and it's receiving light. But you see that this area over here, it's receiving light, it's receiving highlights. Although, like, the nose has a bit of cast shadow around that area of the lip or the mouth, you see that, you know, this area over here, the top lip doesn't accept light, and the bottom lip receives light. And then there's another dark at the lower lip area over here, the cast shadow of the lip, right? The cast shadow for the mouth. And then the jaw over here, it's exposed to light. So once you've understood that, it is really quite interesting to, you know, once you understood the skull, and then you understand how, you know, this basic structure and plane of the face, you understand how light interacts, you understand the hues. I watched a video of Jim Lee where he explained this using a mountain, right? Let's say there's a mountain like this, and let's say light is coming from here, and because light is coming from here, you're going to see the light isn't going to, you know, go over like this. It's just going to go like this. And because it's going like this, and especially if based on the intensity of the light, this area is going to be much more darker. So if there are more mountains over here, like, they're not going to collect the light. But let's say there's another big mountain over here, that mountain is going to receive light. And, you know, because it's receiving light, if there's another mountain over here, you know, it's going to be casting a shadow over here and this other mountain. And you can just think of the human face like that whenever you're looking at the side view of the face. Hopefully that explains it. So you have to understand the androlamine planes of the face, and, you know, you kind of have to understand the skull. I did a video on, you know, practices to do to improve your drawing of the head and the skull. You don't have to do that right away. So you could, you know, once you've drawn your face and, you know, you've gotten this, you do the breakdowns. That is over here. So you map out your planes. Well, as you can see, I've gotten the basics that I want to get. I'll start applying my flat colors. When I'm applying my flat colors, I could approach it in two ways. The first way is that I could, be going pure black and pure white to, just place my values, or, you could just guess like which color is white or which value is lighter, or you could just use your lasso tool and then you figure out your planes. Don't make sure you add every single plane that you're seeing. It's going to be really helpful, and because when you start blending, you're going to see how everything just comes together at the end. So once you've gotten this, the next thing I do is that if you're using Clip Studio Paint or if you're using Procreate, what I do is I get my blending brush. I use this brush. I got this brush from Photoshop. I imported it here, and it's what I use for blending. Ignore the fact that it's in sketching. It's what I use for blending. It's just a basic round brush, and once I have this, I start smoothing these sharp planes, right? Just like this. And you don't need to do it for all the edges, so that you can create some kind of cool looking effects. So yeah, you just do the blending like that around the work, and try to be conscious. So you see that you start to get a bit of feel, and from this area, one thing you could get is you could get a real life reference that has this same lighting. What I usually do is that I didn't do it at the early points of this exercise, but I probably should have. I would have ended up with a better result. Using reference is very important. So I have this app, I've talked about it a lot, Magic Poser. I could take this app and mimic the lighting that I have here, use that as a base to see how the eyebrow is placed and how the nose is placed, and the mouth it's quite similar. It's not exactly how it is with the Asaro Head, but it's quite similar, and I'll just use that as a reference and just paint over it. You could have a real picture with you. You could snap yourself if you can get the same lighting that is on the Asaro Head. You could snap yourself and then use that to get the forms and the facial features, to get them accurately. You put your portrait side by side and you walk. So don't just look at the Asaro Head and then smoothing it out. No, you get the Asaro Head and then you get a portrait. You could get something like this. You could, if you have a 3D, you could get a 3D. It's easier to manipulate the lighting that way. This app is it's semi-free. I'm using the free version. You just go if you're using. I think it's even on Android. So you could just download this app and just place the lighting. I'm definitely sure there are alternatives to this. Once I've done the blending of the values, those sharp values, once I've done the blending, the next thing is to add the skin tones. When I was scrolling Pinterest, I saw that there's this Chinese method. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I saw that there's this Chinese method for actually coloring the face, where you put a yellowish or orange base at the top area of the face, and then you put a reddish base for the middle area of the face. a greenish or bluish hue at the bottom area of the face. And how I add color is that I go to my curves. You can also do this in Clip Studio Paint, and my curves adjustments layer, and then the way this works is that we have our shadows over here. This refers to shadows. It usually works with shadows. So if you want your shadows to be lighter, you raise it up. So this it will make the value have less depth, but then you can always come back and fix it. But like if you want to adjust a color or something like that, you can always use this to adjust the color. But this affects our shadows basically. And let's say you raise it to this point, you're going to see that our shadows are completely gone, like the work in its entirety is completely gone. And this deals with our light. If you bring it down, you're going to see that there's no light at all in the work. There's just complete black. And if you mess with it left and right, you're going to mess with the intensity of the light. If you mess with it left and right, you're going to mess with the intensity of the shadow or the darks. So, and this is what we're going to use to work on our light, and this is what we're going to use to add our colors. So usually with colors, I go for red. I start with red. So with the red, I just raise the shadow for the red up like this, and then the middle part of the green, I raise it up like this, and then I'm beginning to have a little bit of skin tone or skin color, and then I mess with this just a little bit. So just like with the gamma part, like it really covers the general colors that we're dealing with. So just like with this, I could increase the intensity of the red or reduce the intensity of the red, and also reduce. Once I reduce the intensity of the red, you begin to see the other colors begin to pop out as well. The more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. And so we've achieved our skin. We can then go to our hue and saturation, and then adjust the skin a bit. Another way you can do this is you could get the skin color. If you have a reference, just pick a random color and then select it, put a multiply layer to it, and you can always adjust it in your hue and saturation, increase the brightness. So going back to the Chinese thing I was talking about with the skin. So usually when you're looking at a person, like if this is a light-skinned person, for instance, you're going to see okay, let me put this, like with the person's face. When we're talking about the yellow, red, and then green or bluish parts of the face, like why people just use this to kind of oversimplify is because there's a much more better way to break this down. But what I did was I oversimplified. I just applied yellow, red, and blue, right? The reason for this is simple, right? When there is light coming like this, it's going to hit the person's face. That's very terrible coloring. It's going to hit a person's face, and usually if you're in sunlight, it's going to be yellowish. It's going to be yellowish. So there's going to be like a gradation of intensity from the top of the face to the bottom of the face, right? And you're going to see that around this top area, and then at the bottom area you're going to see, like in areas like the ear, like the bags of the eyes, and like the nose, the lips, and these ears. Around these areas you're going to see that there is a bit of red, right? That is where this red comes into play. But with the blue, the blue is getting it's the lowest point. Like the light isn't usually hitting that area, right, a lot, and what you usually get from that area is the atmospheric light. So that's like the reflected light. So you're going to get, like, let's say this guy is wearing I'm just generalizing, but if he's wearing like blue clothes, like a blue shirt or green shirt, that is going to be reflected on his skin. That's going to be reflected on his skin. And most times people usually have this, like for men for instance, they could have stubbles on their face, and you know, if you actually look at a lot of them, that stubble can be, you know, looked at as green. So let's take this default reference now. For instance, the light intensity is coming from this area, right? And it's going to hit the highest point, because if you are like selecting our colors, and we're selecting the highest points, that like with the most intense lighting, right, with the most intense highlight, just like with our Asaro head, it is hitting this highest point over here. It's hitting this highest point of his head, and then there is a lower light over here, and then this part of the eyes has shadow. There's still shadow there, and you're seeing this highlight over here because that eyelid is protruding forward, just like with this Asaro plane over here. If you look at this eye, you can see it's a bit brighter despite that area being in shadow, because that's where, you know, our eye socket is. And our eye socket is deep. So, and just like with this area, this bridge of the nose, which is protruding forward, also has highlight. When we're talking about the yellow, red and blue lighting, you see that, you know, of course the skin tone affects it, but the most intensity is at this top area, like this forehead area. And then you see, usually depending on skin tone, there's this terminator over here, of course, but this terminator, you can see that it's reddish in nature, and you see that his nose over here has a red. His nose over here is red. This cheek area is red. These other parts of his face, like over here like this, it's red. I've not yet known the biological reason for that, but blood usually flows more at that part of our face. Whenever someone is feeling embarrassed or there's like an outburst of emotion, that cheek area becomes extremely red. And then you see, when you go down, of course, because of the environment, there's a bit of a bounce light, right? Reflected light on his skin. So when I pick this color, right, you're going to see how like it's bluish in nature. It's not like blue perfectly, but it has that, it's reflecting the environment around him, so to say. It's quite close to the environment, and we just kind of generalize this color with greenish. You can see there's a bit of a greenish hue, greenish bluish hue around this area. Even though he doesn't have a stubble, it's quite clean shaven, but you see that bluish color around this lower part of his face. And a lot of times it becomes more pronounced, like if he has a stubble now on his face, you see it a bit more greenish. Like, it's not always obvious unless you actually do studies like this, but it's just like an oversimplification of what it looks like. With this dude over here, his skin is much more darker, but it's still supporting that theory of this area of the face being the lightest area of the face. this area receiving less light, this area receiving less light. Same thing with the bridge of the nose, even though it's quite different from the nose shape on the Asaro head is quite different from his own nose. It's still supporting that, you know, the bridge having like the highest point, being the highest point of the face, being another highest point or another peak of the face, that which is going to, you know, show more lighting. With regards to the yellow, red and blue, you're going to see that this middle part of his face it's a bit more redder. Like because of the highlights around these areas, you're seeing a bit more of color, a bit more skin, like skin color, a bit more reddishness around this area of his face. And like in the lower parts of his face around this side, you're seeing a bit more of reflected light, right? So the lower part of the face, this upper part of the face collects sunlight. I'm sure this is a studio picture, so it's not going to like it's not going to support my point a lot, but I just hope, you know, this was the picture I could find in the meantime. I just hope you get the message. But this upper part of the face, usually, you know, you get sunlight, and the sunlight is usually yellowish. And this middle part of the face, it's a mixture of both the sunlight and the skin. And, you know, there's usually blood flow around this part of the face. I said blood flow. There's blood flow around every part of the face, but, you know, you see a lot more blood flow around the cheek area, the nose area, and, you know, that's why you see a lot of reflected skin when there is a high intensity, when the light that is being shown on the skin has high intensity. So yeah, that's where you see things like subsurface scattering on the skin. Yeah, and with the lower part of the face is where we see reflected lights. Like if we look at a bouncing ball, you're going to see the highlights, you're going to see the mid-tone or the base color, and then you're going to see the reflected light, you're going to see the shadows, and then you're going to see the occlusion, in this case, which is this area here. You're going to see the highlights, you're going to see the mid-tones, the terminator, the bounce lights, which is this over here, and then our cast shadow. We don't have much cast shadow over here. We just have it over here with the jaw. But no more. This is a studio picture, so it's not like giving me exactly what I want. Now let's go back to that default picture. Yeah, so we're seeing the cast shadow here. We're seeing our midtones. We're seeing our terminator. This is our terminator over here. Like these areas where you're seeing this reddish, and like where the shadow and the light meet, like the skin tone meets the terminator. And then we're seeing our bounce lights, like this, our environment, and, you know, there's a bounce, the light is bouncing here like this. It's hitting the surface, and then like I think I've explained this before, like when there is a ball over here, right, and then there's a shadow, and then light is coming like this. We have our shadow here, the light is coming all over like this, right? Whatever is here, if this environment is surrounded by, let's say this is a red surface, this red surface is going to there's going to be a reflected light, right? And this reflected light is coming from this area. So the natural light is going to hit this area and then bounce onto this surface over here like this, and that's going to create a whole new, you know, different type of lighting apart from the one that we have. And then we're going to have our lights, like our highlights, which is, you know, the highest point of that ball is where the most lighting is going to be. If this ball were to have like an extra peak over here, and the lighting is directing this part, is going to have the highest, the highlight. And these other areas, you know, there's probably going to be like a cast shadow over here. because of the lighting. Anyways, I would put these colors over here like this, and then I'll blow it, and then everything is just going to kind of seamlessly blend to his skin. So yeah, I'm going to add my details over here, like do a lot of blending and do more adjustments, work on the eyes. Add more details, like make it a bit more whitish, but still leave shadow. It's not going to be totally white. Of course, there's going to be cast shadow of the eyebrows on it. Yeah, something like this. And sometimes when I'm not liking what I'm getting, I'm just going to come over here and pick a color that I probably prefer, and then I'll drop it over here like this, and then I'll just I just do more rendering. Till I get what I want. So as you can see over here in the time lapse, added my three colors, my yellow, my red, and then my blue. And then I added did the normal facial structure, the normal facial details, added the highlights, added the shadow, the highlights to the jaw and whatnot. I also did some more color adjustments, added more highlights to areas that needed more highlights, like this area over here, around the eye bags, just a little bit below the eye bags, and then added highlights around the eyes, and whatnot. The 3/4 angle, you're going to have the same approach. This is my sketch where I'm going to copy directly from the Asaro Head using the Andrew Loomis method for drawing the face or the head in the 3/4 angle. And once I get that, I'm going to apply my planes around the face. Apply the planes around the face, and then I'll start adding my base color and add my details for the skin, like try to copy it exactly, and that's it. And then I start blending it, and then apply the base color. There's the reddish, there's the yellowish hue around his forehead, there's the reddish hue around his cheeks and nose, and then there's the bluish hue, a little bit of bluish hue around his jaw, the side view. So the side view, I just try to play the same approach. My sketch first, the values for the face, and then I then blended it and then added color for the face. Same method and same approach. I did it over and over again. I didn't get the exact same face every single time because I just didn't. I'm not that good at this, to be honest, to get a consistent face. But I was doing this to just get myself more familiarized with the planes of the face, and just to do it as a fun exercise, to be honest. Doing this exercise, this won't be the last time I'm going to do an exercise like this. I'm going to try and do it over and over again, and hopefully with each time my understanding of the planes of the face gets much more better and much more refreshed. And yeah, it's going to improve my lighting, form, and realism and values whenever it is that I'm drawing a portrait or a human face. If you have any questions about this, just let me know. I know this isn't the most structured video ever about, you know, form and applying lighting that there is, but if you have any questions, you can let me know in the comment section, and you know, hopefully I would make a video or reply you in the comment section directly. So that's the process breakdown for how I approach this Asaro head and Asaro skin. Hopefully I touched on, you know, the basics and explained it, how you could tackle it. I did the sketch first. You know, I have my reference over here. Use reference, very important. Use reference. If you could get a lighting that is quite similar to this of a real face, you can put this side by side. You put your Asaro head by your side and then put the reference of that real photo next to you, so that you can, you know, always compare and contrast. It's a very fun exercise. You can always compare and, you know, see, you know, where all these little planes, how, you know, this is a sculpture, so it looks very rigid. You can see how it looks in real life, and then you can apply that to paint a portrait. So I did my sketch. Once I was done with my sketch, I did the blending of the Asaro planes, those hard planes. I blended those planes. And then fourthly, I, you know, added the final touches. The final touches were, you know, adding highlights to the nose, you know, defining the jaw a bit more, defining the cheeks a bit more. Like the ears, I defined it a little bit more. The lips, I added highlights, and then the eyes, and then I added eyelashes, and then eyebrows. If you got value from this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Click on the notification bell to know when I drop a new video. And I want you to remember that it takes a long time to actually get good at anything. Be patient with yourself while still applying consistent effort. Keep drawing and stay creative, guys.